Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's reflection from what a great day here in the back garden. And I hope that I find you well and that your week has been fruitful, engaging, and that you've found some life in it. There's a rabbinic tale that says, or tells a story where the disciples come to the rabbi and say, "Rabbi, why do you teach that the more we sin, the closer we are to God?" The rabbi said, "Can you imagine that there is a thread between you and God? And every time we sin, every time we don't get it right, the thread is broken. But every time God forgives us, He reties the thread. And therefore, this is how we become closer to God." The other question that kids used to ask me in schools was, "Rev, if we are created by God, who created God?" The lovely truth of the scriptures is that God was not created. And this is a long debate. But the consequence is quite important. That if we have been created, just as human beings create all sorts of things, we can also be destroyed. But the scriptural truth suggests that if God was not created, if God existed in the beginning, before the beginning, then God cannot be destroyed. This truth, Jesus wants everybody to grasp in a way. And in his gospel reading in his words this week, in our gospel reading, he says, "Do not be afraid of that which can kill the body, but do be afraid of that which can kill the soul." It's two things here. The first is that in a Roman-occupied empire, your body could be used as lion food. It could be beaten, stripped, hung. Your body could be destroyed. But because we are so valuable to God, the reality of evil must be confronted, and that is what can destroy our soul. And Jesus says, wherever you do, wherever you go, whoever you're with, protect your soul. How do we do this in reality? I guess there are many answers. But one that I'm kind of fond of is the image of a hose. Something I prepared earlier. A garden hose is great. Do you know? Fantastic invention to get basically water from one part of the garden to another where there's a need for life. But if it's not connected, it's a useless piece of plastic. Therefore, a man, or a woman if you are one, must connect one end of the hose to the source, to the tap. The other end, of course, doesn't have to be connected, because once you turn the tap on, the water can flow. But every now and again we have these fancy little gadgets that help us, give us options around how we can distribute that life-giving water to our dry and thirsty garden. And so in our biblical image, we are invited whether we believe in God or not, to reconnect with the source of life, of light, of love. To reconnect and find a way to distribute that life, that love which we find in us to those around us, to the world in which we live, as we make a contribution to change, as we make a contribution to confront evil, as we make our contribution, as we make mistakes, as we sometimes are disconnected with God. We're invited to reconnect and therefore value who we are and our contribution that we make. Jesus was clever because he knew that when people connected to the source of the divine, in our Christian text, when people believed in who God was on earth, Jesus the Christ, the Anointed One, there would be division. Not everyone would agree, not everyone would choose to follow. And therefore this peace that sometimes is so elusive within our families, within our relationships, within our community organisations, can be elusive. But ultimately, when we each connect to the source, when we each connect with that which brings life, light and love into our lives, that should not be denied. And that is the promise of peace that Jesus offers in relationship with him.